Yes, back by popular demand, it is Find Factor Pairs Part 2, giving you some more tricks to use. So today we're looking at 4, we're looking at finding 6 as a factor, we were looking at finding a 9 and 10. So we've got a few to cover here. Some of them are pretty easy, some of them a bit more complicated. First off, here we go. To begin with, finding out if 4 is a factor. Well, first thing we've got to know is this number, in order to find out if 4 is a factor, it must have 2 as a factor. And that's because 2 is a factor of every even number. 4 happens to be an even number. You will find any even number will always have 2 as a factor. So let's say that I'm looking at a larger one. We'll go 36, okay? Well, it's going to be 1 times 36 and then 2 times 18. Now here is the key that I look at to see if 4 is a factor. The number paired with 2 in this case is even. So this number being paired with 2 right there, that 18, tells me that 4 has to be a factor of this number. And indeed it does turn out that 4 is a factor, because if I kept going I would go, well, 3 times 12 and 4 times 9. Now that does not mean that every number that has 2 as a factor is going to also have 4 as a factor. So for example, 18. Let me get a different color ink. Let's go with 18. Well, 18, there's 1 and 18, has 2 as a factor, but the 9 over here that's paired with the 2 is odd. So when I see an odd number there, I know that 2 or that 4 cannot be a factor of that number. So it first of all has to have 2 as a factor, and the number paired with the 2 has to be even. So the number paired with 2 has got to be an even number. That's how you can tell for sure if 4 is a factor or not. So now looking into see if 6 is a factor. Well, first of all, 6 is even, so it has to have 2 as a factor. 6 is also a multiple of 3, so it has to have 3 as a factor. And so that makes sense because 2 times 3 is 6. So any number that has 6 as a factor will also have 2 and 3 as factors. Okay, just to show you, I'm going to pick 2 numbers that I know will have 6 as a factor. We know that 24 is going to have 6 as a factor, and we also know that 30, these 2 are consecutive right here. So let's go 24 and 30. So 1 times 24, 2 times 12, and then 3 times 8. And because it has both 2 and 3 as a factor, we know for sure with both 2 and 3 as factors, this number is going to have 6 as a factor. It's a given. It's going to happen. So the next number I would go to would be 4 and 6. Well, sure enough, there it happens to be. Since 2 and 3 worked, that 6 right there showed up. So if a number has both 2 and 3 as a factor, it will always have 6 as a factor. The same is going to be true when we go over here to 30. Well, it's going to be 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10. And since I've got a 2 here and a 3 here, well, that's the same story. It's automatically telling me I'm going to have 6 as a factor. It's going to happen. So then the next one will be 4, which is not going to work in this case, because that 15 right there is telling me that it's not going to work. So then 5 is going to work. Well, 5 times 6. Okay, well, look there. The 6 worked out. Because it had both 2 and 3 as factors, 6 has to be a factor. So that's how we look and see if 6 is a factor of a number. Okay, second of all, or third of all, 9. A number would have 9 as a factor. 9 is very, very closely related to 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. So it shouldn't come as much of a shock to you that the way that we tell if 9 is a factor is the same way that if we tell if 3 is a factor. So if I listed the multiples of 9, and I'm just going to list a few of them. There we go. Okay. So this is 9, 18. If I add the 2 and the 7, I get 9. Oh, and the 18, the 1 and the 8, it gets 9. If I add the 3 and the 6, I get 9. If I add the 4 and the 5, I get 9. If I add the 5 and the 4, I get 9. If I add the 6 and the 3, I get 9. If I add the 7 and the 2, I get 9. So the way to tell if 9 is a factor of a number is you add the digits, and if they equal to a multiple of 9, so if they equal to 9, 18, 27, 36, most of the time the numbers we deal with would equal to 9, but larger numbers would equal to any of these right here, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45. Then you would know it's a factor, it has 9 as a factor. So this would let us do, work with numbers like, okay, well, 108. If I add 1 plus 0 plus 8, if I add all these right here, I get 9. Even if I went to some outrageous number, like let's say 22,718. Well, if I add all these digits right here, 2 plus 7 is 9. 1 plus 8 is 9. Those two added together get 18. That tells me that 2,718 has 9 as a factor. So you can just add the digits. If they add up to a multiple of 9, then you know. That's it, real quickly. And finally, telling if 10 is a factor. This is probably one of the easiest ones. You might know the multiples of 10, and you can look at them and you can see that every single one of them ends in 0. There's always a 0 in the ones place, and that's indeed our rule. If you want to see if 10 is a factor of a number, look in the ones place. It's got to be in the ones place. It can't be in the tens place, can't be in the hundreds place, can't be in the thousands place. It's got to be in the ones place. If it's got a 0 there, it's got 10 as a factor. So if I went, let's go 45,970. It's got a 0 in the ones place, folks. That's going to have 10 as a factor. It just is. And in fact, if you want to see an easy way to tell which number I would multiply times 10 to get that, just knock off the 0 in the ones place, and I would multiply 4597, so 4,597 times 10 to get that. You can just knock off that in 0 and tell what to multiply by 10, because multiplying by 10 put the 0 on there in the first place. All right, so that's how you tell if 10 is a factor of a number. So now then, let's put all this together. We're going to just find the whole number factors of 36. Well, I know that 1 times 36 is 36. Always going to be. Is 36 even? Well, it sure enough is. So I know that 2 is going to be a factor. If I don't know what I would multiply, what's the other factor that goes along with 2, the other factor pair, I can do the division problem up here. It's not a big thing. So there it is. It's telling me it's 18. So 2 and 18. Okay, look at there. It's an even number that's paired with 2, so that tells me 4 is going to work. But before that, I got to go to 3. So my checking is 3 plus 6. If I add 3 plus 6, I get 9. Well, that tells me that 3 is a factor and 9 is going to be a factor. So I got knocked out 2 birds in 1 stone right there. So 3 times 12 is 36. We said 4 was going to work earlier because that 18 that was paired with 2, 4 times 9. Also notice, I want you to notice this really, really quickly here. The 18 and, oops, I'll move my screen there. The 9 are closely related because the 18, if I cut it in half, I get the 9, and that's the number that pairs with 4. Okay, if you don't see what I'm talking about, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's not a big thing. All right, so now then, we said that 9 was going to be a factor, but we've got some numbers to check in between there. Would 5 be a factor? No, it doesn't have a 5 or a 0 in the ones place. Would 6 be? Well, look, there is a 2 and a 3 in this number. There they are. There's a 2 and there's a 3. So 6 is going to work. Has to. And 6 times 6 is 36. There's my repeat. I got 2 6s. I'm done. It should work out this easy way right here. If you just know these factor rules that I'm putting to you, you should be able to find factors of numbers pretty easily. I hope this all works out for you. Good luck on the assignment.